Hello, I'm Yolanda Terrell, and I'll be discussing record keeping and meal counts. Topics that we'll review are administrative records, operating cost records, maintaining records of costs and tracking funds, and meal count records. Administrative records. The sponsor must maintain all program financial records documenting program income and expenses, such as invoices and receipts, bank statements, checking account ledgers, and program reimbursement payments received. Records must be kept to confirm that the sponsor is in good standing with all program requirements. Other administrative records include administrative costs, training records, and site visit or review records. Administrative costs. Administrative costs are costs incurred by the sponsor for activities related to the planning, organizing, and administering the program. These activities include preparing and applying for participation, establishing the eligibility of open or restricted open sites by collecting the required data, attending training, hiring and training site administrative personnel, visiting sites, reviewing, monitoring operations at sites, preparing and submitting a plan and summary of the invitation to bids, preparing and submitting claims for reimbursements, and performing other activities that are necessary for planning, organizing, and maintaining the program. As far as training records, sponsors must maintain all records for the 3 years after the end of the fiscal year of operation. Records must be made accessible for state agencies or auditors. Records can only be dispersed after 3 years if there are no audit findings or the program is not under investigation. I want to highlight that information that you should include in your training records are dates of training for site and administrative personnel. Attendance at each training session must be documented by a sign-in sheet, and topics covered at each training session. For the site view and review records, sponsors must be able to document that they have met their monitoring requirements. Monitors must submit a report for pre-operational site visits during the first week of program operations, site visits throughout the summer, and monitors must submit a review report form for each site during the first 4 weeks of program operations. And this is mostly if a sponsor has multiple sites. The operating cost records. Operating costs are allowed costs incurred by the sponsor for preparing and serving meals to eligible children and program adults. These costs include costs of food used, labor, non-food supplies, and space for the food served. All costs must be fully documented and must represent actual program costs. Food can either be prepared on-site or vended through a food service company. If prepared on-site, documentation should include reports that record the amount of food received from the supplier, purchasing invoices, record any returns or discounts or other credits not reflected on purchase invoices, and inventory records that reflect the kinds of food items at the beginning and end of the inventory period. If the food is vended, then during the meal, the site supervisor or designated site personnel should determine the type and quantity of meals served, ensure that meals meet the meal pattern requirements, note any errors on the delivery slip, and maintain the signed detailed delivery slip to support the sponsor's claim of reimbursement. More operating costs include labor costs. These costs include compensation by sponsors for labor that is required to prepare and serve meals, to supervise children during the meal service, and to clean up after the meals. These costs may include wages, salaries, employee benefits, and other share or taxes paid by the sponsor. These costs must be approved first before claiming. This is a list of program operating costs, program administrative costs, and unallowable costs. Maintaining records of costs and tracking funds. Records must be maintained that document the amount and purpose of all administrative costs attributed to the summer food service program. Sponsors must be able to account for the receipt, obligation, and expenditure of all SFSP funds. Program and non-program functions must be separated or allocated properly. Retention of records, as mentioned earlier, records must be disposed of after 3 years if there are no unresolved audit findings or the program is not under investigation. Meal count record. All sponsors must keep full and accurate records to substantiate and reconcile all submitted claims for reimbursement and to document that funds have been spent on allowable costs. The linked meal counter must be used to document meal counts. Site supervisors are responsible for keeping the records each day. The site personnel must complete the records based on actual counts taken at each site for each meal service and each day of operation. When they collect the site records, sponsors should check if the site supervisor's signature. Any sponsor serving vended meals must be sure that the figure entered as the number of meals delivered on the site record is the same as that entered on the vendor's report. Any discrepancies between the numbers should be reported immediately to resolve this problem. Listed are questions to consider when gathering your meal count information. Next, this chart shows the potential common meal count problems that will indicate red flags. So make sure that you review this sheet to make sure that you are not falling to these common problems. Thank you.